The coffee was still hot when my son looked me in the eye and said I was an embarrassment to this family. Not a disappointment, not a burden, an embarrassment. I remember the exact weight of that word. I was holding my mug with both hands the way I always do on Sunday mornings, the ceramic warm against my palms, and my son, my own son, 34 years old, a man I taught to ride a bike and helped through 2 semesters of failed grades, and drove to the emergency room at 2 in the morning when he was 19, and too scared to call anyone else. He sat across from me at my own kitchen table and said that his father-in-law knew how to carry himself in public, that his father-in-law had class, that his father-in-law would never show up to a family dinner in a flannel shirt. I set the mug down very carefully. "Tell me," I said, "does your father-in-law know about the $8,000? The room went completely still. My daughter-in-law, Priya, stopped reaching for the sugar bowl. Her hand just froze there in midair. She looked at her husband. And my son looked at me with an expression I had never seen on his face before. Not anger, not guilt. Something closer to fear. "What, $8,000? Priya said. That was the moment I understood that the past 3 years had not been what I thought they were. I should back up. My name is Edwin. I am 67 years old. I spent 31 years working as a civil engineer for a county infrastructure firm in Central Ohio, and I retired 4 years ago with a modest pension, a paid-off house on Sycamore Lane, and what I believed was a reasonably good relationship with my only child. My wife Connie passed 11 years ago. Breast cancer, diagnosed late, gone fast. She was 52. After that, it was just me and my son Nathan, and for a long time I think we held each other up without either one of us ever saying so out loud. That is how men in my family have always operated. You don't name the grief. You just show up. I showed up when Nathan was 26 and his first apartment flooded and he lost most of his furniture. I drove a truck down to Columbus on a Friday night and helped him haul everything to storage. When he lost that job at the logistics company, the one he told me he quit voluntarily, though I had my suspicions, I did not ask questions. I just quietly transferred money into his account when he met Priya at a work conference and proposed 8 months later and told me they needed help putting down a deposit on a condo in Dublin, Ohio, because they wanted to be in a good school district even though they didn't have children yet. I wrote a check for $12,000 and told him that's what family does. Priya is a perfectly nice woman. I want to be fair about that. She works in pharmaceutical sales, and she is sharp and ambitious, and she kept my son from floating away, I think, in those early years. Her family is from India originally. Her parents settled in New Jersey in the 80s, and her father Raj built a very successful IT consulting business. By the time Nathan and Priya married, Raj and his wife were living in a 5-bedroom house in Bridgewater and driving cars I have never owned in my life. I am not saying this as a complaint. People earn what they earn. I have no bitterness toward Raj. He worked hard and built something. Good for him. But I noticed over time that Nathan began measuring everything against that house in Bridgewater. The cars, the vacations, the way Raj picked up every check at every restaurant without hesitating. Nathan started saying things like Priya's dad would just handle it when something came up that required money. He said it lightly, the way you say something when you've been thinking it for a while and it finally slips out. I handled it. I always handled it. 3 years ago, Nathan called me on a Tuesday evening and said he was in a rough spot. He had been passed over for a promotion and their expenses had gotten away from them. He needed help. Not alone, he was careful to say. Help. I asked how much. He said he wasn't sure yet, but maybe $2,000 a month for a few months until things leveled out. I said yes. I was 64 years old, living alone on Sycamore Lane, and my monthly expenses are not dramatic. I have my pension. Connie left a small life insurance payout that I never touched. I said yes because he was my son, and because I believed him when he said a few months. A few months became 12 months. then 18. Then I stopped counting. I set up an automatic transfer on the 15th of every month, $2,000, sent to the account number Nathan gave me. A joint account, I assumed, where both he and Priya managed household finances. I never asked for a statement. I never asked for receipts. He was my son. You don't audit your son. What I did not know, what I could not have imagined, was that the account number he gave me was not a joint household account. The Sunday that changed everything started normally enough. Nathan and Priya came for dinner the way they do about once a month. I had made pot roast because it was October and cold, and pot roast was something Connie used to make on cold Sundays. And I have learned to make it reasonably well over the years. I had the table set. I had rolls warming in the oven. Priya's parents were visiting from New Jersey. That was new. They had never joined us for Sunday dinner before. And Nathan had called ahead to mention it almost as an afterthought. The way he mentions things he knows might bother me, but is hoping I won't make an issue of. I made no issue of it. I set 2 more places. Raj and his wife, Meena, arrived with wine and a bouquet of flowers for the table, and were perfectly gracious people. We talked about the weather and Ohio, and whether the highway construction on I-71 was ever going to end. Normal dinner conversation. I was fine. It was dessert that unraveled things. Raj was talking about a trip they were planning, something in Portugal, and he mentioned that he and Meena had offered to pay for Nathan and Priya to join them as an anniversary gift. Priya looked delighted. Nathan looked at me. I don't know why he looked at me. Maybe he wanted to see my reaction. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe he was just nervous about what came next. What came next was that Nathan said, with this particular tone he gets when he is performing confidence he doesn't quite feel, "It'll be good to have a real vacation. We've been pretty stretched lately, honestly. The house expenses, you know how it is." Raj nodded sympathetically. "You two work hard. You deserve it." "Priya's dad has always been generous," Nathan said, and then he paused, and something shifted in his face, and he looked at me and said, "He actually shows up for his family." I thought I had misheard him. "He invests in us," Nathan continued. There was a smile on his face that I can only describe as performative, like he'd been storing this up. He doesn't just sit on his money and offer advice. Priya made a small noise. Meena looked at the tablecloth. I set down my fork. "Nathan," I said quietly. "No, I mean it, Dad. Raj gets it. He understands what family actually costs. It's not about showing up with a pot roast. 67 years old, and I have never wanted to disappear from a room more than I did in that moment. Not because I was ashamed, because I was so tired. Tired of the performance. Tired of the comparison. Tired of being held up against a measuring stick I never agreed to be measured by. I looked at my son, and then I looked at Priya, who was staring at her plate. "Nathan," I said again, still quietly, "does Priya know about the transfers?" Priya's head came up. "The monthly transfers," I said. "The account. The $8,000 I've sent over the last." I did the math in my head. 38 months. The number landed on the table like something dropped from a great height. "What transfers?" Priya said. And there it was. What followed was not a scene I am proud of, not because of anything I did, but because watching your child be exposed is its own particular kind of grief, even when they've earned it, even when they've put you in the position of exposing them yourself. Priya asked Nathan directly. Her voice was very controlled, the way people get when they are deciding whether to fall apart. Nathan started with deflection. "It's complicated. I was going to tell you, it was just a buffer account." And each deflection made it worse. Raj and Meena sat very still. I sat very still. Eventually, because there was nothing else to do, the truth came out in pieces. Nathan had given me an account number that only he controlled. Not joint. His alone. For 38 months, the $2,000 I sent on the 15th of every month had gone into that account, and Priya had never seen a dollar of it. She had believed this whole time that they were managing their finances on their 2 salaries alone. She had been careful and anxious about money. She had told Nathan more than once that she wished they had a cushion. He had a cushion. He just hadn't told her about it. Where did $76,000 go over 3 years? That came out in pieces too, over the following days, not at the dinner table. Sports betting mostly, some of it in fantasy leagues that escalated. An account on one of those apps that makes gambling feel like a game because it is designed to make gambling feel like a game. He had won sometimes. That's what those things do. They let you win enough to keep going. And he had lost more than he won. And at some point losing became something he was managing in secret the way you manage a leak. You're too ashamed to fix. I did not know any of this at the dinner table. At the dinner table, I only knew that the money had gone somewhere Priya hadn't seen, and that my son had been performing financial stress for his wife while quietly draining the account I had been filling. "Why didn't you tell me?" Priya said. She wasn't yelling. That was almost harder to watch. Nathan didn't have an answer, not a real one. I looked at my son across the table and I felt something I am still trying to name. It wasn't anger exactly. It was something older and sadder than anger. The feeling of recognizing that you have been loving someone in a way that enabled their worst self, and that the love was real, but the enabling was still wrong, and you cannot separate those two things as cleanly as you'd like. "I need everyone to give Nathan and Priya some time," I said. I stood up. "Raj, Meena, thank you for coming. I'm sorry for this." Raj looked at me with an expression that I think was respect, and that surprised me. He nodded once. They left quietly. Nathan and Priya stayed another hour. I sat in the living room. I didn't listen at the door. Some conversations are not mine to be part of. When they left, Nathan stopped in the hallway and looked at me and said, "Dad, I'm sorry." Just that. He looked young in that moment. Younger than I had seen him look in years. "I know," I said. I did not hug him. I don't fully know why. It wasn't cruelty. I want to be clear about that. It was just that I had reached the end of something, and hugging him in that moment would have been a performance of forgiveness I hadn't actually arrived at yet. I believe in being honest about where you are. I closed the door. I stood in the hallway for a while. Then I went and washed the pot roast pan. I called my attorney the following week. Her name is Patricia, and she has handled my estate planning since before Connie died. She is 70 herself, sharp as anything. And when I explained the situation, she did not say I'm sorry or how awful. She said, "What do you want to do?" I appreciated that. I told her I wanted to revise my will, not out of punishment. I want to be honest about my own motivations because it's easy to dress up punishment as wisdom, and I am trying not to do that. I revised it because the situation had clarified something I should have thought through years earlier. Giving a large lump sum to Nathan at my death was not, given what I now knew, an act of love. It was more likely to be an act of harm. The house on Sycamore Lane, the retirement accounts, the small portfolio Connie and I had built over 30 years. I restructured it. The bulk goes into a trust, not for Nathan directly. For any children Nathan and Priya may have, managed by Patricia's firm until they reach 25, Nathan receives a modest annual distribution. Enough to matter, not enough to gamble. The rest is time-locked. I also stopped the automatic transfers the day after that Sunday dinner. I called the bank and cancelled them myself, standing in my kitchen, still in my pajamas. It took 4 minutes. I don't know what I expected to feel. What I felt was something close to relief, which surprised me, and then the relief made me sad. Because relief means you were carrying something heavy, and I hadn't let myself know how heavy it was until I put it down. Nathan called 3 days after the dinner. He was calmer. He said he and Priya were going to couples counseling. He said he had deleted the betting apps. He said he knew he had a problem and that he was going to deal with it. I said I was glad. He asked if we could talk about the financial support continuing in some form. Not for him, he said, for the household, to help them stabilize when he got things sorted out. I thought about that for a moment. Nathan, I said, I will help you get into treatment if that's what you need. I'll find you the program. I'll go with you to the intake meeting. I'll sit in the waiting room. That's help I will give you without a second thought. But the money, he said. The money was going somewhere I didn't know about, I said. I'm not willing to do that again, not because I don't love you. Because I do. There was a long silence. Priya's dad offered to help, he said. Not angrily, more like a reflex. That's between you and Priya and Raj, I said. I hope he does. I hope you let him. Another silence. I shouldn't have said what I said at dinner, Nathan said. About you not showing up? No, I agreed. You shouldn't have. I was trying to. I don't know what I was trying to do. I think you were trying to feel better about something you felt bad about, I said. That's human. It's not okay. But it's human. He was quiet for a while. Then he said, Are we going to be all right, Dad? And here is the thing about that question. The honest answer is, I don't know. I don't know what all right looks like from here. I don't know how much damage 38 months of secret keeping does to a family, or how you repair it, or whether the repair looks like what you had before or something different. I have seen marriages come back from worse. I have seen them not come back from less. I think that depends a lot on what you do next, I said. And I'll be watching, not to catch you failing. Just because you're my son and I'm your father and I'm not going anywhere. He didn't say anything for a moment. Then, okay, I said. It has been 4 months since that Sunday dinner. Nathan is in an outpatient program for problem gambling through a facility in Columbus. He goes twice a week. He told me this himself, unprompted, which I took as a good sign. Priya is still with him. They are still in counseling, still working it out. She called me once, a few weeks after everything happened, just to talk. We talked for almost an hour. She told me she'd always liked coming to Sunday dinners and that she hoped that would still be possible. I told her the door was open whenever they wanted to use it. Raj called too, which I did not expect. He is a straightforward man. He said he had put Nathan in touch with a financial counselor he trusted, someone who worked with families dealing with what he called compulsive spending situations. He said it without judgment. He said he hoped I wasn't offended by his involvement. I told him I was grateful. That surprised him, I think. There was a pause before he said thank you. Here's what I have been thinking about in these 4 months. In the mornings mostly. With my coffee at the kitchen table where all of this started. I have been thinking about what love looks like from the outside versus what it is on the inside. From the outside, for 38 months, my love for Nathan looked like $2,000 on the 15th of every month, no questions asked. It looked like generosity. It looked like sharosing. From the inside, if I am honest, it looked like avoidance. I was afraid to ask hard questions because I was afraid of what the answers would say about me. What kind of father raises a son who needs this kind of help? What kind of father doesn't notice? If I asked and the answer was bad, then I would have to sit with the answer. So I didn't ask. That is not love. That is fear wearing love's clothing. Real love. The kind that actually helps someone. Sometimes looks like standing up at a dinner table in front of your daughter-in-law's parents and asking a question you know is going to blow the room apart. It looks like canceling a bank transfer and sitting with the discomfort of having done the right thing. It looks like saying, I will sit in the waiting room, but I will not write the check that makes it easier for you to avoid the waiting room. I am 67 years old and I am still learning the difference. I suspect I will be learning it until I'm done. The house on Sycamore Lane is quiet in the mornings. It has always been quiet, but lately the quiet feels less like absence and more like space. Room to think, room to breathe, room to figure out what comes next. My attorney has the revised documents. The trust is set up. Whatever comes after me will go to the right place. And on the 15th of this month, for the first time in over 3 years, no transfer went out. I stood in my kitchen and watched the notification not come. And I thought about Connie, and I thought about what she would have said. She would have said, I waited too long. She would have been right. She would have also made me a cup of coffee and sat across from me and not said another word about it, because that was Connie. She knew when the talking was done. I miss her every single day. But I think she would be proud of me for this one. Not for cutting off the money, for finally asking the question. For finally deciding that love and accountability are not opposites. They are the same thing, just at different ages. Nathan is coming for dinner next Sunday. Just him and Priya. Pot roast again, because it's still cold and it was always good, and some things you keep because they're worth keeping. He asked me on the phone if I needed him to bring anything. Just yourself, I said. Okay, Dad, he said. That's enough for now. That is exactly enough. I have been sitting with this for 4 months now, and I think the thing that stays with me most is not the betrayal. Though that was real, and it hurt the way only quiet, long-running things can hurt. What stays with me is the question of how I got there. How a man can write a check every month for over 3 years and never once ask where it's going. I told myself it was trust. It was love. And maybe part of it was, but if I'm being straight with myself, sitting here in this kitchen on a Tuesday morning with nobody to perform for, a bigger part of it was avoidance. I didn't ask because I didn't want the answer to change anything. And that is not wisdom. That is just fear with better posture. There is a version of this story where I am the victim, and Nathan is simply the villain. It would be easier to tell that version, people would nod along. But I was a participant in what happened. Every month I made it a little easier for my son to keep going without confronting himself. I smoothed the path. I thought I was helping him walk it. What I was actually doing was helping him avoid it. That is what I mean when I say actions carry weight forward. Not in any mystical sense, just the plain mechanical truth that what you do today shapes the ground under tomorrow's feet. I kept sending money, so Nathan kept on dealing with the problem. The problem grew. The day it finally broke open in front of everyone, and the damage was wider because it had been left alone longer. That is cause and effect. That is just how things work, what I want. What I am genuinely trying to build in whatever years I have left is the kind of intelligence that asks hard questions before the situation forces them. Priya lived with a secret for 3 years that she didn't even know was a secret. She was careful with their budget, anxious about money, doing the responsible thing, while her husband was quietly undermining all of it. That is what a lack of honesty costs the people closest to you. Not just the person keeping the secret, the people who never had a chance to know. Nathan is doing the work now. Twice a week, the program in Columbus, the counseling with Priya. I am watching, and I am not pretending it is finished. But I believe in the capacity of people to grow when they finally stop running. I have seen it. I have had to do some of it myself. Connie used to say that the most loving thing you can do for someone is refuse to lie to them, even when the lie would be kinder in the moment. She meant it about small things. She hated when I said dinner was fine when it wasn't. But she was right about big things too. The kindest thing I could have done for Nathan years ago was ask the question I was afraid to ask. I didn't. I have to live with that. But I can also decide what I do from here. Sunday dinners are back. The door on Sycamore Lane is open. Pot roast is on the stove. Some things you keep because they are worth keeping. And some things you let go because holding on was never really help. It was just a habit that looked like love until the light hit it differently.